As part of our continuing discussion on measurement and measuring devices, I'm going to be discussing for a few minutes the appropriate use of different types of devices and containers for liquid measurement. Specifically, I have a graduated cylinder that we just refer to as a graduate, and also have a beaker and an Erlenmeyer flask. Now, these are all perfectly useful devices for holding liquid, but they're not equivalent in terms of measuring liquids. In fact, often the manufacturers will put, this one doesn't have it, this one's liquid, has one, that these are approximate measurements. Right? A graduated cylinder is a more accurate measuring device. So that's all I want to say. This is a more accurate measuring device. So for the sake of our discussion, we're going to be looking at how that plays out in the lab. Students are often tempted to use a beaker to make up a solution. Has measurements on the side. If I'm wanting to make up 400 mils of a solution, it looks like a perfectly usable thing. But notice they said the measurements are approximate. Right? If you're wanting to accurately prepare a solution, the beaker is not an appropriate measuring device. It makes a good mixing bowl. Right? You know, if you're wanting to make 400 mils of something and stir it in something, this is a perfectly good thing. But it's not appropriate to measure. So for case in point, I have a 600 mil beaker here that I've measured, or I put to where it says there are 400 mils of liquid into that. I'm going to transfer this to a graduate and see what the graduate tells me. Oh, the graduate tells me there are 380 milliliters in there. So I would have made an error in my solution by using a beaker as a measuring device. Right. Erlenmeyer flask, also useful for making media, putting in a shaker for shaking things, has a nice mouth. You can put a stopper in for various things, but for measuring, you know, it's not accurate, approximate volumes. Now I put 200 mils of water in this flask. Transferred it to this graduate, and we have 185 mils as opposed to 200. There again, not accurate for preparing solutions. Okay. The graduate is probably the principal device or used in the laboratory for preparing solutions. This one is a 500 milliliter graduate, so it could obviously be used from anywhere up to 500 mils and incremental values in between. And you notice its height being cylindrical gives it a form to create a meniscus. Right? And we discuss reading the volumes by reading the volume of the meniscus. The narrow cylindrical form forms a much more discernible meniscus even than a wide flask would be. I also have three different types of cylinder here. This one being glass. These two are plastic. You can see the kind of the advantage of the glass, and you can see how clear it is and how much probably easier to view the liquid inside is. The disadvantage is if I knock it over, it's going to be toast. You know, it's gone. The plastic ones are much more durable. for lab use. They have good accuracy. You can see this one is very durable, but you can see it's kind of a cloudy plastic, which would make it more difficult to read the volumes on some liquids. Now, lastly here I have a volumetric flask. Right? Now, you'll notice it's a bit different than this flask that has the silk screened volumes on it. It has no volumes on it at all, except it says that it's a 500 milliliter flask. Notice we use the term volumetric. That means its volume is 500 mils. And if you look closely, there's a small engraved line about halfway up the neck of this flask. That line is precisely etched into the flask at that point to be precisely and accurately 500 milliliters volume. So if you're making up a solution in this type of flask, then you can make it very accurately, but you can only do one volume. It's designed for a fixed volume, a 500 mil. I have here one for 100 mils. So it's very good accuracy, but it's designed for having a fixed mil. Also, there's variability in accuracy between the manufacturer on how carefully that line is etched. This flask has a B on it, right? So it has a little bit larger margin of error than an A-class volumetric flask. So really, the point of this discussion has been to use the appropriate measuring device when you're preparing solutions. Beakers and flasks are very useful for mixing and handling liquids, but they're not the appropriate container for doing accurate measurements. Like I say, for high precision, standard volumes, volumetric flasks are nice. For routine lab use across a broad range of volumes, the graduated cylinder is the vessel of choice.